In one day, she went from the happiest bride to the most humiliated woman in the village. But fate wasn't done with her. 10 years later, she returned. Not in a bridal veil, but in power. And this time, the man who left her would beg for mercy. This is the story of Tasha's last laugh. The morning sun spilled its golden light across the small village. Lanes buzzed with chatter, the scent of marigolds drifting lazily in the warm air. Inside a modest courtyard sat Tasha, her hands still, her heart racing. An elderly aunt traced intricate mehndi patterns across her palms, each swirl carrying the weight of her dreams. From the doorway, Cork watched. Her childhood friend, her silent protector. He smiled. "Tasha, are you ready to make Robert the luckiest man alive?" She laughed softly. "It's a wedding, Cork, not a lottery." But she believed it. She believed in Robert, in his love, in the promises they had whispered beneath the banyan tree all those years ago. The courtyard filled with music, the beat of the doll echoing through dusty streets. Guests gathering, colors swirling, laughter spilling like sunlight. But far away, Robert stood beside another woman, Romisa, a vision in shimmering silk, and an offer in her voice colder than the steel in her gaze. "Robert, my father will sign the deal only if you walk away from that village girl, today." Robert's eyes shifted, not toward the village, but toward the gleam of Romisa's diamond necklace. It sparkled like a promise of wealth, power, and an escape from the simple life he'd once dreamed with Tasha. "And what about her?" he asked, voice low. Romisa's smile sharpened. "She'll survive. Poor girls always do." Back in the village, Tasha waited. Every tick of the clock stretched longer, heavier. Guests whispered. The doll beat slowed. Cork's jaw tightened as he scanned the empty road. Hours passed. The sun began to sink, bleeding orange across the sky. And still, no Robert. Finally, a boy from the neighboring village ran into the courtyard, breathless, eyes wide. "Tasha, I saw him." "Robert, he's gone, with another woman." The courtyard fell silent. The guests shifted uncomfortably. Tasha's hands trembled, the mehndi dark on her skin, the weight of every broken promise pressing down on her chest. Cork stepped forward, placing himself between her and the crowd's stares. But it was too late. The whispers had already spread, and so had her humiliation. That night, the village slept. But in a small, dark room, Tasha sat on the floor, her bridal clothes still draped around her, the scent of wilting flowers filling the air. The mirror before her was cracked, a gift from the celebrations earlier. Now, it reflected a face she barely recognized. Tears had dried into salt on her cheeks, but her eyes had changed. The soft girl who once dreamed of love was gone. In her place, someone colder, someone sharper, was beginning to take shape. Cork tapped gently at the door. "Tasha, I know you don't want to hear this, but Robert and Romisa left for the city tonight. They're getting married tomorrow." For a moment, there was no sound, no sob, no scream, just the faint hum of the night. And then, Tasha's voice, low, steady. "Cork, one day, I will make them regret this. Not just for what they did to me, but for thinking I'd stay broken." She looked up at the cracked mirror and smiled. It was the kind of smile that didn't belong on a bride. It belonged on someone planning a war. 10 years later, the village had changed. The dusty lanes now had paved roads, the market buzzed with new shops, and the old banyan tree stood taller than ever. And down that main road came a black SUV, its engine purring like a predator. Inside sat Tasha, not the girl in a red bridal veil, Not the girl with trembling hands and tear-streaked cheeks. This Tasha wore a tailored black suit, gold watch glinting under the sunlight, and eyes that could freeze a man in place. The driver pulled up to the newly built community hall. Children waved at her. Elders nodded with respect. Everyone in the village knew her name now. Tasha, the businesswoman who built schools, funded hospitals, and gave jobs to the poor. Cork stepped out from the passenger side, smiling. They say Robert and Romisa will be here tonight for the village's annual gala. Tasha's lips curved, not into joy, but something darker. Good. I was beginning to wonder when the rats would crawl back. She stepped out of the SUV, her heels clicking against the stone path. For the first time in a decade, she was home. And somewhere deep inside, the bride who was left at the altar was finally ready to collect her debt. The gala glittered under strings of warm lights, music spilling into the night. Laughter, clinking glasses, and the scent of roasted spices drifted through the air. Then, the doors opened. Robert walked in, older, heavier, but still carrying that self-assured smirk. On his arm, Romisa, draped in a gown that screamed money, diamonds dripping like rain. The room shifted. Conversations faltered. Eyes darted between them, and the woman standing near the stage. Tasha. Her gaze locked onto Robert's, and for the briefest second, his smirk faltered. Well, well, Romisa purred, her voice loud enough for nearby guests to hear. The village girl grew up. Tasha didn't blink. She stepped forward, her heels clicking like a countdown. And the city couple looks tired. Robert tried to chuckle, but the sound cracked. Tasha, it's been a long time. She tilted her head. Not long enough. The crowd sensed the weight in her tone, the unspoken history crackling between them. Romisa's painted smile tightened. Still holding grudges after all these years? Tasha's eyes didn't leave Robert's. Oh no, not grudges. I'm holding something much heavier. And then, she smiled. The same cold, war-planning smile from a decade ago. Robert swallowed. For the first time that night, he looked afraid. Dinner was served. The air filled with the clatter of silverware and the hum of small talk. But Tasha wasn't here to eat. She was here to feed something else entirely, the fire she'd been carrying for 10 long years. Cork moved through the crowd, handing sealed envelopes to select guests. Each one contained a photograph, grainy, but clear enough. Robert, Romisa, and a safe full of cash they'd stolen from their last business partner in the city. Gasps began to ripple through the room as the envelopes were opened in whispered circles. Romisa noticed first, heads turning, voices lowering. Robert, something's wrong. Tasha stood near the stage, watching, her wine glass untouched. Robert pushed through the crowd, trying to grab the photos out of people's hands, but it was too late. The whispers had turned to open accusations. Words like thief, liar, fraud sliced through the music. A reporter from the city, invited by Tasha herself, raised his camera. The flash lit Robert's face pale. Robert Nelson, care to comment on the charges being filed against you tomorrow morning? Romisa's grip on Robert's arm tightened. What is going on? Tasha finally stepped forward, her voice calm, cutting through the chaos. Just giving my guests something to talk about. And then, she raised her glass toward Robert. Cheers, old friend. The crowd's eyes followed her every move. Robert's hands curled into fists. But Tasha simply smiled. The game had begun. The night ended in shouts and flashing cameras. By morning, the headlines had spread like wildfire. Businessman Robert Nelson under fraud investigation. In his hotel room, Robert paced like a caged animal. Romisa sat on the bed, scrolling through her phone, her face pale. Robert, our accounts. They're frozen. What? He barked, snatching the phone from her hand. Sure enough, every account showed the same word in bold red: suspended. He slammed the phone down. It's her. Tasha. She's doing this. Romisa's voice trembled. Then stop her. That afternoon, Robert stormed into the community bank where Tasha was holding a press conference for her new charity project. The cameras caught everything. Robert shoving past security, his voice booming. You think you can ruin me? I'll drag your name through the mud, Tasha. Tasha didn't flinch. She looked straight into the nearest camera lens, her voice like silk dipped in steel. Robert Nelson is welcome to try. But remember, every time you throw dirt, you lose ground. Gasps and chuckles broke from the crowd. Robert's jaw tightened. He pointed a finger at her. This isn't over. Tasha's smile returned, slow and deliberate. Oh, Robert, it's only just begun. As he stormed out, Cork leaned toward her. He's going to make mistakes. Tasha's eyes followed Robert's retreating figure. That's the plan. Robert's pride was louder than his sense. 2 days later, a post appeared on social media. A shaky video of him in a private meeting with a shady developer, promising to make the investigation disappear for the right price. The account that posted it, anonymous, but the watermark in the corner, belonged to a small media agency Tasha quietly funded. Within hours, the video was everywhere. The evening news, trending hashtags, even gossip blogs that never cared about him before. Comments flooded in. Corrupt. Dirty. Finished. Romisa threw her phone onto the marble counter. Do you have any idea how bad this looks? Robert was already on the phone, his voice low, threatening. I'll sue every last one of them. But while he raged, Tasha moved. She called for an emergency community meeting. Concerned citizens packed into the hall. The projector lit up, replaying the very same video, and when it ended, Tasha stepped up to the mic. I think we can all agree, she said, her voice steady, that men who cheat the public don't belong in positions of trust, or power, or anywhere near our money. Applause erupted. A few people even stood. Outside, reporters waited like wolves. When Robert tried to slip in through the side door, cameras swarmed him. Mr. Nelson, did you take the bribe? Are the allegations true? Flashes blinded him. He shoved a microphone away, only to hear it. A laugh. From across the street, Tasha stood in the shadow of a lamppost, watching. That same cold, knowing laugh from years ago. Robert felt it crawl under his skin. For the first time, he realized she wasn't just ruining his reputation. She was dismantling his entire life, piece by piece. It started with the phone calls he didn't get. The investors who once called him a visionary now wouldn't return his messages. By the end of the week, his business partner sent a single-line email. Effective immediately, our association is terminated. Romisa watched Robert pacing the living room, his shirt untucked, hair a mess. They're all turning on me, he muttered. Because of her. She's poisoning them against me. Romisa crossed her arms. Maybe they're just seeing the truth, Robert. The words hit harder than he expected. Whose side are you on? He snapped. Silence. That was answer enough. Meanwhile, Tasha was meeting with a local council member in a quiet cafe. She slid a thick folder across the table, pages of evidence on Robert's dealings, each stamped and signed. If you move on this now, she said, you'll clean up your city and make headlines doing it. The councilman flipped through the pages, his eyes widening. You're giving me a political gift. Tasha's smile was razor-sharp. Consider it community service. By evening, Robert received notice of a full government audit. His lawyer advised him to stay out of sight, avoid the press. But staying hidden wasn't Robert's nature. And that night, he made the mistake Tasha had been waiting for. At a private club, desperate and half-drunk, he ranted to a group of old friends about how he would crush that little witch. He didn't know one of them was recording. By morning, the clip was online, and suddenly it wasn't just fraud. Now it was misogyny, and the public loved to hate him even more. The storm around Robert had grown into a hurricane. Clients gone, partners gone, even Romisa's patience gone. She left a note on the kitchen counter. "I can't go down with you." Robert sat alone at his dining table, the curtains drawn, the air heavy with stale whiskey. He was flipping through the channels when he froze. On the largest news network in the state, there was Tasha, live. She stood in front of the community center, cameras framing her like a leader in a moment of victory. "We've worked hard," she told the crowd, "to expose corruption, to protect the people who can't fight back. And today, we close the chapter on one of the worst offenders." Behind her, a large screen lit up with documents, bank transfers, secret property deals, and finally, Robert's own signed confession from years ago, buried in an old settlement. The audience gasped. The anchor's voice cut in. "Breaking news. Robert Nelson has been issued an arrest warrant for fraud, bribery, and tax evasion." Robert's glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He stumbled to the window, peeking out through the blinds. Flashing red and blue lights were already pulling up. When the knock came, it was loud, final. He opened the door to see two officers, and behind them, on the sidewalk, Tasha. She didn't say a word, just watched as the cuffs clicked shut. As they led him away, he turned back, shouting, "You won't get away with this." Tasha's voice followed him like a shadow. "I already have." The crowd cheered. The cameras rolled. And for the first time in 10 years, Tasha felt the weight lift from her chest. The past was buried. Justice was served. Some say revenge is a fire that burns until there's nothing left. But for Tasha, it wasn't about the fire. It was about the silence after, when the last scream fades, and the only sound left is victory. If you think this was cold, wait until you hear the next one.